Hey, folks, welcome to today's episode of the TikTok Diner. Please grab yourself a menu, have a seat. Your server's going to be right with you. This is sponsored by Baseline Web Design. They have just finished our new website. Be sure to check it out at freightfraudtaskforce.com that went live yesterday. Huge thanks to Paul and his team for getting that up for us. Great show for you today. We are still kind of trying to work with a couple of things. We're having issues with LinkedIn right now. So I'm going to try to get that fixed. In the meantime, I want to go ahead and hand it over to my trusty sidekick, the man who has been known for his job in building the pyramids, Jeff Dickinson. Jeff, welcome. How are you doing today, buddy?
I am doing well, John. It's you said it's going to be a good show because we got Jeannie in the bottle with us today, and we're going to be talking about factoring. It's going to be a good show, so I can't wait to be part of it.
Okay, and I've just confirmed we are now finally live on LinkedIn. So if you're joining us on LinkedIn, please also grab a menu, have a seat. Your server's going to be right with you. And we're going to go ahead and get a nice helping of freight fraud in front of you with a side of prevention. And we have, again, as Jeff pointed out, Jenny in a bottle. Jenny Chrestman of Freight Recovery Specialists. She is a collections company dealing specifically in collections for transportation. So she sees all the double brokering crap that goes on and helps carriers recover the money that they've lost when they've hauled scammed loads. So, Jenny, you have had one hell of a rough case
Oh my gosh.
hit you over the last few months. Why don't you go ahead and walk us through what happened?
Well, I had a carrier come to me. They were owed approximately $85,000 from a broker, and they said they are not wanting to pay us due to an offset for a stolen load. So that's how it began. They didn't. The story goes they apparently their identity was compromised. They did not know it. They had no idea till they received a freight guard report. Once they received a freight guard report stating that their dispatcher was rude and that they were trying to redirect them to a different email address. Don't trust this carrier. So they were like, whoa, we got a problem here. So they went ahead and they buttoned everything down, changed passwords, tightened everything up, and they were like, shoo, dodged a bullet. 2 days after that, they get a call from a broker stating, where is your driver for this load? And they said, what load? We don't have a load with you guys. And they said, yeah, you do. And they said, nope, we don't know what you're talking about. And so what had happened was the imposter hacked in to their email. I think I don't think they clicked on anything in the email. I think it just simply was they opened the email and then it didn't pertain to them, so they closed it, but it launched the Trojan that gave them the back door. When the imposter went in there, they blocked all of the incoming email from that broker. And because they found information on a load in their email that they wanted to book. So they booked it while they were in there as my carrier client and blocked the return emails from that broker. So the carrier was blind to it. And then they sent in an imposter carrier to pick the load up, and subsequently it was stolen. The broker wanted to lay that on the carrier whose identity was stolen at 100%, all of them $85,000 gone. My contention to that was that the only two parties that had an opportunity to do anything about it, to change it or stop it, was the broker who arranges the transportation. And in doing so, they must verify and validate who they're doing business with and know that that's who's on the other end of that email or phone call. And the shipper who is loading the actual truck that shows up. And then my carrier client was completely blind to it. What were they supposed to do to stop it? So they said, no, there's offset in our broker carrier agreement. We have indemnification clauses. So no, you must pay the $85,000. And so at that same time, they were running dedicated USPS mail lanes for the same broker for another division of theirs. And they had $85,000 worth of loads. And so they just didn't pay them for those loads. So that's how they got the money from my carrier. And so they contended that they were in breach of contract of their broker carrier agreement. I said because they didn't accept the tender on the load, they didn't send in a truck, they never took possession of the freight, and they didn't deliver. Therefore, there was no broker carrier agreement in play. Yes, there's a broker carrier agreement. We do business together. But just because I say I'm going to indemnify you doesn't mean from here to eternity on everything under the sun from now until forever. I mean, it's with unloads that I am in control of, that I've tendered. And so I said, since there's no broker carrier agreement, that means there's no offset trigger and there's no indemnification clause either. So they wholeheartedly disagree with me. They also said that they realized that as a larger brokerage, that they have resources that a lot of carriers don't have. Like they have a chief security officer, and they have a whole team of security people that sit around and twiddle their thumbs and dream up new security measures, but apparently not one for this. The commodity that was stolen was tires. For cars, not for big trucks, for cars, all different sizes from Continental Tire. Now, further compounding the problem is there was misrepresentation involved. So, Jeff, do you know what misrepresentation is? I'm sure you do. So that's when a broker represents themselves as a carrier on some form of paperwork or advertisement. They're not supposed to hold themselves out as the carrier on the BOL, the rate com, or any other documents that are regarding that load, because it's that carrier spot is for the name of the carrier that is picking up. So the name of the broker was in the spot of the carrier. And this broker also has a carrier asset division with 54 trucks out of the same place. So my client's name isn't even on the paperwork anywhere. Anywhere.
Yeah, interesting. And I had this conversation some time ago, Jen. That some of the big carriers out there, like the Swifts, we'll just name them. They have a brokerage division, and every time that they have overcapacitated, and they don't have the capacity in place, they give that to the brokerage division. They have them pick up the slack. But a lot of times they don't tell the shipper that they're doing so. And you got this other carrier that they brokered out that bang your docks, and you think it's a Swift, and you just load them. So you think about the fraudulent activities that happen where they could intervene that transfer, right? If they're not protected, and have anybody come in there and pick it up and saying that they're Swift without having the notification on the paper. But, I want to go back to one thing you said. So when we started out talking, you started saying that basically they were holding the load and payment ransom, sort of.
They hauled 62 loads of USPS mail on dedicated mail and a trailer and a universal pool that they were in with some other carriers for this broker. And right. So those loads were hauled at the same time that this one was stolen. So they just held all the payments for those 62 loads.
See, that's against the law. You
right,
can't. You cannot do that. You have to pay. You have to pay the rate to whomever it is, and then work through.
Right. And I told him that. I said that claims are supposed to be handled as a separate transaction. So when you have a claim, technically, I know Jeff fell off, but I'm going to explain it. So, So when you have a claim, they're supposed to, if you've hauled it from A to B, they're supposed to pay you for the line haul. Then they're supposed to address the claim as a separate transaction altogether. And then they're supposed to work it out. Now, offset clauses in the broker carrier agreement allow brokers to circumvent that and operate those as one transaction. But again, since there was no broker or carrier agreement in play, that means there's no offset trigger and no indemnification clause. And so they should not have been offsetting there. I will be right back. I got to put this dog out.
I have been following Jen through that entire drama over the course of the last couple of months, and it's almost amazing because there are attorneys who have told her that the way she has dealt with this and the level of research that she's done, that she should be an attorney. But as you pointed out, Jeff, not only is that illegal, everything is supposed to be done on a load by load basis. And that's the way the law is written. You even look at Carmack, any kind of claims that are out there are done on a load by load basis. So you can't just do that. But there are many cases where brokers have put all these different clauses into their carrier broker agreements to try to circumvent a lot of these laws and think that just because they have it in a contract, they can supersede federal law, which is not the case. The only problem is that you don't have many of these things having been tested in federal court. Therefore, they will stick to their guns with their attorneys who sit there and say, hey, you got every right to stick to your guns. It's all in the contract. Well, just because it's in the contract doesn't mean you can supplant U.S. law. So, you know, which direction do you go in? Which is why anyone who watches this, who knows anything about the law, knows that law is a practice. And it is literally that. No one seems to do it right.
Yes.
So anyway, Jen, you were saying.
So anyways, so then after they figure out that the load has been stolen, the shipper comes out with, oh, looky here, we got the truck on CCTV footage. Here's the truck. And we have the copy of the driver's license of the driver. Fantastic. 6 months later, when I get the case, not one person has called this carrier that picked the load up. Haven't given the FBI or the police
cargo. Don't call the guy whose truck it went on.
Right. I called the guy up. I said, Antonio, where is it at? And he says, oh, they texted me another address. I had to take it to somewhere else. I said, where is it? I don't have the text message anymore. I said, oh. I said, how about the paperwork? I've been asking for a signed BOL, a signed rate con. I'd like to see the signed rate con. I don't have that yet. So you can send me the rate con and the BOL. Oh, I can't find that paperwork. Conveniently can't find that paperwork. So he provides me a BOL from another broker. He says, this is the broker that gave it to me. This isn't a BOL, a rate con for that. It's a rate con for a different load, but this is the broker that gave it to me. I was like, does me no good. I can't just call this broker up and say, hey, you know, back in March, there was a load. It got stolen. Do you know what I'm talking about? They're going to look at me like I got two heads. So I was like, that's not helpful at all. The third time I talked to him, he says, I'm not talking to you anymore. And conveniently today, his authority has been revoked.
You know, what a lot of carriers don't understand, especially some of the newer guys who came in after COVID, there are laws out there that state how long you're required to maintain documentation for every single load that you do. Right. If I recall correctly, that regulation states that you're supposed to maintain BOLs for at least a year. I couldn't remember if it was a year or 3 years. I know back when I had my own carrier company back in 2019, I still have every single BOL, every single delivery slip from the residential deliveries I used to do for both XPO and Estes. I have every single one of them sitting in storage boxes in my storage locker, and I've never let them go because something can always come back and bite you. And that's why these laws exist. It's why these rules exist. Brokers have the same rules. Brokers are supposed to maintain all the documentation for every single load for a set period of time. And, oh, by the way, brokers, you have an additional requirement under 49 CFR 371.3 to provide copies of that documentation to the shipper and to the carrier on request. Now, and that's I know broker transparency is a whole nother ball of wax that still needs to be resolved. And FMCSA says they're going to deal with it this year. I'm not holding my breath. But the law does exist, and it's been there since Motor Carrier Act of 1980. So I don't like how brokers try to write off all of their responsibilities on a contract, even though those responsibilities are delegated under federal law. And that's really what I think all this starts to roll back into at the end of the day.
Yeah, you know something, John, also that's pertinent. That same holds true for hazmat documentation. You have to, you have to, I mean, if there's, you know, a more important document, it's that hazmat. You know, you must file. It's like ISO. You know, you do what you say what you do, you document it, and you keep it in there because at some point, somebody may ask for that paperwork. And if you can't present that, you are in trouble. I mean, deep trouble. And to your point, I used to keep my paperwork for a very, very long time. You know, it's almost like taxes. You know, keep them for 7 years, and then after the 7th year, you can shred them. You know, I had boxes worth of them because I never knew, and I always filed them chronological order by year, by date, by month. because you never knew when you'd be asked, for that stuff.
But let's face it, and this has been one of the biggest issues in this industry, and I've said this is the third show I've said this on today. Okay, is that in the past we have had a lame duck government agency who has pretty much just not paid any attention to what's going on. They've not paid attention to their own regulations and rules. Anyone who with a heartbeat can get their hands on an MC number. It has been absolutely crazy. And now we are now reaping what we have sown as a nation, as an industry. Everyone wants it cheaper, faster, better, all that good stuff. And now we've entertained bringing in the non-CDLs, cheating on the ELDs, do whatever you have to do to get the load done because the broker doesn't want to lose the customer, et cetera, et cetera. But in doing that, we have conditioned ourselves to circumvent the regulations, to circumvent the laws. And I'm dealing with this now with a couple clients I'm working with. They know they're dealing with a double broker. They know that this large carrier they work with is double brokering these loads out. The only saving grace is the loads get to where it's supposed to go. So they figure, okay, well, we know it's a problem. We'll deal with it as we can find additional capacity and whatnot. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going into a capacity crunch. You now have a very active FMCSA administrator in Derek Bars, who is very interested in enforcing the laws, who is very interested in trying to right the ship, who's very interested in trying to get the bad CDLs off the roads, who's very interested in getting the bad CDL schools out of business, and then going after the bad carriers and brokers. It's coming. And we're having a severe capacity crunch. How many trucking companies, big trucking companies, went under from mid-December to Christmas? How many people got pink slips in their Christmas stocking because the company went under? The numbers are staggering. Yep. However, and I just had this conversation with Chris Jolly a few minutes ago on his show. The prediction that's out there now is that the carriers, the carriers that are going to go under, for the most part, have. We're finally starting to see that level off because rates are starting to come up. That capacity crunch is finally starting to impact the rates. Next step is the brokers. The brokers who have been teetering on the edge, they are going to fall off now. I think you're going to see a huge spike in broker failures coming, which is then going to put Jenny in a lot more work because, you have carriers who think I got a rate confirmation, I'm going to get paid. They go to send the invoice, and then all of a sudden there's no payment. And then the brokerage racks up $1 million in payables if they only have a $75,000 bond and get paid 7 cents on the dollar. I mean, come on.
When Pan American Transport went out in 21, they had $3.1 million against their $75,000 bond. It paid out at 2.9%.
2.9 cents on the dollar. Can you imagine having to accept that and take that on the chin? But a lot of carriers are going to go through this. So it's very important.
Imagine having $100,000 worth of receivables and only getting paid $2,900. That's what it's
crazy. That it's absolutely crazy. Carriers have got to pay attention to the ratings that brokers have when it comes to their financial health. They have to pay attention to that because financial health is going to be the biggest issue for brokers over the course of the next year. Yes, rates are going to go up, but how many shippers are going to accept the fact that their rates are about to start to skyrocket? None of them. They've all been dealing for the last 3 years with dirt cheap rates. They've been getting away with, essentially murder. But because we've been in this period for so long, and this is what people don't seem to understand. We've been through this for so long. This is the norm for everybody. We're about to now transition from a broker's market to a carrier's market. And as we make that transition, new brokers have no idea how to deal with that. New shippers who have been rotating their logistics people, they don't know how to deal with it because they've not seen it yet. And now we're going to be in a position where freight is not going to get moved. because we just don't have enough capacity. And now, how many more rules are they going to skirt just to get capacity through? Which means how much more fraud takes place as a result. This is a cycle that is going to be very difficult to break.
And
It's
let me
a
just
perfect storm.
add in there that with these bigger brokerages, I've been granted transparency against Uber. We've got C.H. Robinson, TQL, and the gamut out there. Guys, you are the marker for the rest of the small brokerages out there. So whatever you do, everybody else is going to try to do. So if you're out there and you're offsetting stuff improperly, they're going to do the same thing because they think, well, they're doing it, I can do it too. It's just like the co-brokering mess, that everybody gets into. They don't use it properly. I mean, some people use it properly, but very few use it properly. So, just be mindful when these things come up. The broker stands in high opinion that if it went to court, that the courts would find that my client allowed their infrastructure to be hacked. And I've told him, no, you can have the most secure network in the world and it will still get hacked. Ask the government, ask everybody. I mean, if it's a ground zero virus or malware or spyware, if your definitions aren't updated to that, it's not going to recognize it. It's only trained to recognize what it knows.
Yep.
So you can have the most secure, and if you get your credit card stolen or somebody gets your numbers from your credit card and they rack up stuff, the credit card company gives you your money back and they pursue the imposter. In my experience in collections, when brokers' identities have been stolen and loads get posted on the load board as them, but it's not their load really. It's a different, it's a load they got and just pulled a rate con offline and put the information on it and said, okay, yeah, I'm Pam Transport now or whatever. We don't hold their feet to the fire. We say they're a victim, just like the final mile carrier who's not going to get paid from this. But then when the shoe is on the other foot, then we say, oh no, it's all their fault. You already agreed or admitted yourself, the brokerage that I was speaking with, that you have more resources than these carrier companies do, and that you have a chief security officer and you have this, but there's nothing in the broker carrier agreement, not implicitly or explicitly, that says that they have to have two-factor authentication, that they have to have a secure network, that if they get hacked and then something is stolen, that subsequently they are responsible for it. None of that is in there. I went through it line by line multiple times. I fed it through Grok and GBT and everybody else under the sun to see if I've missed something that says it is not there.
Yeah, we've said before, brokers like to write away some of the responsibilities that they have. And it's easy to do because a lot of carriers out there are, one, ignorant to what's going on. As a dispatcher, how many times have I actually stopped and read a broker agreement that I've signed 50,000 times on RMIS or my carrier portal or something along those lines? It's mostly boilerplate. So have I read each and every single one? No, of course not. Who the hell has? But you also expect that every player in a transaction is acting ethically and with the best interests at heart. And that's absolutely not the case. Everyone's in it for themselves. Let's face it. It's all about the mighty dollar. It is all about the almighty dollar. And how can I maintain my profit margin? And if I'm a private company, keep my own profits up. Or if I'm a public company, keep my shareholders happy. And what do I need to do to make that happen? Forget what laws exist. And that is really what it turns around and bites everyone in this industry. And it's so bad right now. It's so bad that it is putting the industry in a position of potential total collapse. I'm not trying to be alarmist here, but let's be real. The transportation industry is exceedingly fragile. There are so many bad actors involved in it that it only takes one honest carrier to have a really bad day to know that he's about to lose his home before he turns bad and starts doing bad things.
Desperate people do desperate things. Bad people hurt bad people.
And the vast majority of this industry is desperate. And until that changes, security is going to be difficult to find here.
Well, something too is that it happens in the LTL market as well. Shippers declassify, misrepresent their classifications and their weights. And I try to drill this into people's heads. especially when you're in sales and you're talking to a company that moves LTL. Listen, you don't want your freight to be red flagged. Okay, if it goes to W and I constantly all the time, waiting an inspection, and they see a trend, they're not going to want to pick up your freight. They what shippers try to do is save money and say it's a lower classification than what it really is. From a 400 to maybe a 250 or 125, and then they push it along and they misrepresent the weight and everything. And it's just like, great, I got it for $197 to move this, or 280, whatever it is, right? All of a sudden it hits the W and I, whoever is picking that up, and they get these additional charges on it, and then they're noted. This shipper, is not a preferred shipper. We used to have preferred shipper, preferred carriers, because they did the things ethically. But things like that are going to happen, especially when rates start rising. It's going to go across all different types of modes, and you got to be aware of this, and you got to know how that industry works and that mode works, so that you can tell your client, this is what's going to happen if you do not follow the rules.
So I reached out to that broker to say, hey, this is not a legal offset. We shouldn't be operating this way. I need you to just go ahead and pay these. And then if you want to talk about what their responsibility is or is not to this other stolen load, we can talk about that. And so they then turned me over to their attorney. So that was fun. Their attorney tried to bully me right away, use a lot of legalese speak. I asked him to give it to me in English. I said, I'm not an attorney. I'm not trying to be an attorney. I've had to read a lot about this to make sure I know what I'm talking about here. I think I pretty much have an understanding, but if I'm mistaken, please use this opportunity to educate me. That's how I always approach the attorneys, because they went to school for a long time to learn this stuff, and I by all means don't know everything, although I like to pretend I do. I play one on TV. but 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 no, and he told me, he says, well, you would be a good one. He says you've done a lot of research and you're passionate about it. But he didn't want to give me things in normal speak. He still wanted to make it very convoluted for me. So at the end of the day, he came back with if I had a week to come up with a settlement agreement, a settlement offer on the stolen load, what we would agree to. And then if I didn't have that done in a week, they would be filing a lawsuit against my carrier client for oh, what was it? I just had it right there. And it just went right off this tip of my tongue, for declaratory relief. They wanted the judge to declare that the offset was legal, and so that we would stop pursuing this. And I told him, I said, well, if we have to go to court, that's fine. We'll go to court, I guess, because I just don't believe that there's any court in the world that would say that my carrier is responsible, Narc, for the $87,000 or $85,000 worth of freight that's missing, when they were blind to it. And the shipper did not make sure that they had the driver's license of the driver, and they didn't look at the name on the truck. I mean, it should have at least warranted a phone call to the broker to say, hey, your name is still on this BOL. What carrier did you assign this? We want to make sure we're loading the right truck, especially if you're loading a highly susceptible commodity to be stolen.
Yep.
If you have Apple iPhones on there, I hope you're going to call somebody and make sure they got the tender. Hey, did you get that tender I sent over? Are you good to go? Hey, I have the driver's number. Is that correct? I mean, so then they wound up saying, my carrier says, well, if an attorney's going to do a settlement, then we may as well offer our own settlement so we don't waste money on an attorney. So I let the attorney know we'd be bringing a settlement offer, and he told me, make sure that it is only on the portion that is covered by merchant's bonding. Okay, so I will name this the surety bonds here, because I think this is very important. This spanned two different surety bonds. They had a transition in the middle. So the first surety bond was Great American, and they were responsible for $75,000 worth, because that's how much was on theirs. There's actually a little bit over, I think 3,000 over. And then 7,300 was covered under merchant's bonding bond. And merchant's bonding used American General's denial to substantiate their denial. So the blind leading the blind. And they both denied it. When I went back, I called them on the phone. I said, I don't think you understand. The 62 loads that were run are not contested. They are clean loads with clean paperwork. Those are the loads we're asking to be paid on. We're not asking to be paid on the stolen load. That they're using that to offset. Oh, that's not how it was explained to us. So they sent it back up their chain. They came back down and said, we're denying this claim because the broker says there's a dispute. So you're denying the bond claim because the broker said so. So now whenever anybody files in a bond, brokers just say, I dispute it, and now bonds are worth nothing. Because now they won't pay that bond unless you get a judgment from a judge in a court. So no more attorney's fees, more court time, more. If every carrier had to go to court to get a judgment to get paid,
Broke.
where would we be?
Yeah. So what's the purpose of a bond? What then becomes the purpose of the bond? We're looking at here. What is it? In a week from tomorrow, FMCSA is going to start an enforcement push on the BMC 85 bonds. These are the bonds that are backed by trust funds, cash, and real assets, not the sureties. Okay, the sureties are BMC 84s. So BMC 85s are about to go under a major enforcement push where they have to declare that they actually have real assets, real cash, not fake, that are backing those bonds to a minimum of $75,000. And what this enforcement push is trying to do is it's trying to make sure that if that bond value of the BMC 85 drops below 75,000, then the broker has 7 calendar days to then replenish that, and that be recertified by the bond company to the federal government within 7 calendar days, or the broker loses their authority.
Yeah.
Let that sink in for a second, okay? Because most of the big guys, they don't need sureties. They have these trust fund things.
Yep.
That means that if a broker only has that $75,000 bond and a single claim goes against it, it could be for $1. They risk losing their bond. Now, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I'm under the opinion that if you have a bond, if you're required to have a bond as a broker, that bond shouldn't just be $75,000, because you can do $75,000 worth of business and tell the carrier to go pound sand in just a day. Okay. It needs to be at a value comparable to roughly 30 days revenue, or a percentage of your annual revenue. That is what your bond level should be set at. So I would love to see the Fed change the law to meet something of that standard. And that would better protect carriers in a situation where the broker's about to go under. They stay very quiet about it. They fly under the radar until they actually close the doors, and then thousands of carriers are out thousands of dollars for whatever. This will protect the industry. That's what the bond's there for, to protect them.
Now, what they said in the claimant letter to the claimant was to summarize the bond's protection under the referenced federal statutes, which is 13906. Great American's bond was issued to protect motor carriers or shippers from the uncontested non-payment of freight charges for their transportation of interstate and non-exempt commodities. So when I go back and I read the section about this, it says that in order to pay out the bond, either A, subject to review by the surety provider, so by the bond company, the broker consents to payment. In any case which the broker does not respond to adequate notice or address the validity of the claim, semicolon, the surety provider determines the claim is valid. Or number 3, the claim is not resolved in a reasonable period of time following a reasonable attempt by the claimant to resolve the claim under clauses 1 and 2. The claim is reduced to a judgment against the broker. So technically, that's kind of how it reads. But I take number 2 to read that in the case that the broker doesn't respond to adequate notice or address the validity, or the surety provider determines the claim is valid. They're saying we're not a court. We're not going to make a judgment on this. We're protecting our principal, and that's our job. So we're not paying this because they say there's a dispute. So brokers, I gotta say, is I contested. There's a dispute.
It's crazy because, and brokers know damn well that most carriers that are out there, 97, 98% of the carriers that are out there, cannot afford to hire an attorney to be able to try to get such a judgment.
Especially if they're going to lose half of their money. But I mean, if this is an $87,000 claim, they're looking at less than $40,000 by the time it's said and done with.
In attorney's fees, absolutely. Good luck trying to go ahead and sue the broker to get those fees covered by the broker himself.
And the judge might
It's so
grant you
much.
your attorney's fees or a portion of them or none of them. So you might get your attorney's fees back. You might get your court costs back, but it's not a guarantee. Yes, they can request it. And a lot of times it's granted, but it might not be the full portion. Or they might say,
And how long will it take?
Right.
How long
And
will it take? I mean, because then they can go on appeal.
so
The big brokers,
right.
they got the money. They can sit on this stuff.
So I got fed up with everything. I filed complaints with the FMCSA Office of Registration Financial Responsibility to who they have oversight over BMC 84 and 85 bonds and surety and trust funds. So they are to handle those. And they're not covered by Department of Treasury surety bonds. I found out, but I copied both of them on it. But the FMCSA does have the oversight on BMC 84 bonds. So I filed complaints to investigate those two bond companies for improper payment of BMC 84 bonds and to see if they are still allowed to have the authority to issue bonds. I've heard nothing back on that particular claim because that didn't go through the NCCDB because there's not an option for surety providers on the NCCDB. So that one had to go separately. Then I filed a complaint against the broker on the NCCDB. I have reached out to attorneys. I have talked to Hank Seaton and Dale Prax. I have just run them over the washboard to try to squeeze everything I can to figure out where, because I just don't feel like they should have to go to court over this. I don't feel like this should require an attorney stepping in. This is misrepresentation. This is nobody followed up with the imposter carrier because they already had my carrier's money. So why do we need to go after them, right? We already have the money. And so I did what I do best, and I stirred the pot some more, and I decided to write an article for one of the industry publications. And I also involved my partner Alex Lockheed from Overdrive because he wrote the articles over my transparency when I was granted transparency. And I said, "Hey, are you interested in this?" And so he said, "Sure, I'd love to write about it." And so then about 4 days later, on Christmas Eve, I got a call from the COO of that brokerage for an hour on Christmas Eve to discuss this. And they said they disagreed, and I said, "I don't know. Your attorney won't hear any, offers of settlement." And he was like, "Oh, I don't know why they involved the attorney, anyways. Blah blah blah." But I said, "But I'm just telling you, if for the attorney, I would have not gone any less than a 50-50 split. That would have been the lowest we would have accepted." Because then we can use that as a way to help educate the community on, you could have done this better, we could have done this differently, and at the end of the day we have an amicable agreement. It's not necessarily what everybody wants, and it might not be what everybody believes is right, but it will get us through. It will cover the expenses to the bare minimum, and we can continue to do business as usual. And that broker was very, very happy with this client, their performance when they were with them, and they wanted them back, and they have some work for them. So they put cupcake icing on it and sprinkles and said, "Here, we'll get you some work and help you grow your company some more even." And so therefore all parties have come to a reasonable agreement. Part of that agreement says that we can't say their name. So that's why we're not using the name. And that's fine with me. I just think that at the end of the day, it doesn't really reflect poorly on them. It's an educational opportunity for others to learn from. And that if they were real leaders in the industry, they wouldn't mind having their name out there and saying, "Look, we definitely could have done something better here."
Well, let's go ahead and break it down. That's what the task force is all about, is the education piece. So let's break it down. Let's start with the carriers piece. Okay. Now, the impersonated carrier in question here, their email got hacked. Okay. So
Right.
What could they have done better, if anything, in this particular situation?
Well, I don't think they had two-factor authentication set up on their system. So they did implement that after the fact. They changed their passwords, and they could have maybe put out an advisement to Highway that they knew that they had been compromised for a couple of days once they got that first initial freight guard, but they thought they had dodged a bullet and had no idea about this other load. So that they were unaware. But I would have said that they could have announced it like through Highway or put a flag on their account that says, "Hey, just so you know, their identity was compromised for 3 or 4 days. It's back under control, but just in case you did anything with them over that period, you might want to double check." That's what I think they could have done better. I don't know what else they could have done, not knowing what was going on.
I agree with the multi-factor authentication. One of the things that I recommend when carriers come to me about an impersonation on their behalf is I ask them to reach out to social media. Go out to social media, say from this time to this time, if you booked a load with us, please double check with us to make sure that we actually book those loads so that we can try to catch any of the bad actors that may have been impersonating us during that time frame. I'm not such a big fan of going to folks like Highway, MCP, RMIS, and saying, hey, during this time window, we were impersonated. The reason why I say that is because I have seen those agencies put that flag on the carrier's file, and then all of a sudden it blacklists them for up to a week.
Right. They get them on a
and
cool
causes
down.
them problems.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. They want a cool down period. And I understand that if you're in the middle of an active impersonation case, then you actually want that because an impersonation attack tends to last anywhere from a couple of days to a week. It's usually not longer than a week. Once they go and they take control of a load, they only want to be able to continue the impersonation until they complete the theft. And then they break ties and leave everyone to deal with the aftermath. So they are not in somebody's inbox for a very long time. So I get why they do it, but it is still detrimental to a carrier to do that. So I would rely on social
typically,
media,
if you call them
Reddit,
yourself,
etc.
if you call if you call Highway yourself and let them know it's been secured and they can verify it, then they'll usually not put you on. Like I've had somebody on the cooldown and I've reached out to Highway and said, look, they did have a breach. It's been handled. They're back. They have back control of everything. Can you please remove the cooldown? And they have taken them off the cooldown when they just went back and verified it. So if you find somebody is on a cooldown, you can reach out to those entities and say, yes, they were, now they're not, they have control, can you please take them off the cooldown?
Cool. We'll keep that in mind. Okay, so that's the carrier.
Yep.
Now let's look at the broker. What could the broker have done? The broker,
first of all, they only communicated with the carrier via email initially. They didn't call up to say, did you get the tender or anything like that. They received driver information from the imposter, and they had that driver's phone number so they could track. But they didn't call to say, now driver Antonio, he is picking up, he's scheduled to pick up on this day, or just a check. Brokers have no problem waking up drivers all the time when they're in the middle of their 10-hour, to check on where they are and what they're doing and if they're going to be on time. So why not go the extra mile when you have a commodity that is sensitive to being stolen, especially? I mean, if it's gold bullion, are you not going to call and make sure that they've got the tender? I mean, if we have a load of Apple iPhones, are we not going to call and make sure they got the tender? If they're tires, are we not going to call and make sure they got the tender? Let's just make sure we know who has it. If it's tobacco products, are we going to make sure they got the tender? I mean, let's think about how we can help our customers, our shippers, and our carriers to not have this happen to them. And then they certainly could have made sure that they received the tender. They certainly could have done an investigation immediately to send the police out to we have the guy on CCTV footage. Okay, well, that name on that truck clearly did not say what was on that BOL. So why was there not any kind of investigation done in the moment when perhaps we could have found the freight? We would have a claim to talk about.
That then bleeds over into the shipper, and we all know shippers have, for the most part, no offense, Jeff, for the most part, are the biggest problem in this industry with the what I like to call apathy as to what's going on.
If they don't care about their freight, why do I?
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, what it comes down to is a lack of processes and work instructions.
But they took the driver's license and took a photocopy of it, and they found the guy on the CCTV footage. How much effort would it have taken to verify? And you're with what company? Oh,
no, you just go out out.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're that lazy and you didn't want to get up and walk out there, you're with what company? Oh, wait, the broker didn't put your carrier name on here. Let me just verify you're the right carrier. I got so and so here from such and such. Is that who I'm supposed to load?
But if you talk to somebody like Amazon or Walmart or Costco, they're going to sit there and say, we move so much freight so fast, we don't have time to make that phone call.
Doesn't
And
take
I think that's
to take
You
a
know
look.
what? If you're making that much money,
Utter
hire another
BS.
person.
It's
If you're
utter
that
BS.
busy,
Utter
if you're
BS.
that busy, you've got plenty of money. Hire another person that does nothing but run out and check the truck.
It doesn't
I
take long
think
to
the
do
big
it.
shippers are the biggest cancer in this industry.
What was that, Jeff?
You were saying, Jeff?
So, believe me, it doesn't take that long to do it. When I was working on that side, I had my dock supervisors. That was part of their responsibilities. If it banged the dock, you go out there, you take a look at the cab. You even did pre-trip inspections with them. It doesn't take long, 10, 15 minutes, just dot the I's, cross the T's to make sure that, and then they would say, if his name was Joe, you go, so you're Tim, right? No, I'm Joe. It's like, hey, okay,
Yeah.
that's the right guy. You don't call him by the original name. You call him by a different name. Go, oh, I'm sorry. You gotta play that kind of
Joe
game.
was the one that was before you. That's right. Sorry, mixed you up.
Yeah. No, exactly. But it comes down to work instructions and processes. And then mirror that image at all your facilities and make sure, if you do, it's like ISO, you do what you say what you do, and then build it and mirror it at all your facilities. So if I took Jen and put her in Minneapolis, it would be like she's working in New York. It's the same damn thing. You put the best foot forward, the best practices, and you follow suit. And that's what kind of, gets you away from facing fraud activities. You gotta think like a thief, really. And how are they going to penetrate my operations? And just look at those areas. And if you've worked in that area a long time, then it just comes like second nature. Even with freight payment services, and you just name it, inbound, outbound specialists. Dock supervisors, loaders, and everything. You got to keep an eye on everything that moves in that warehouse. I never sat in my office. I was always on the floor learning and watching what people were doing.
And wondering what that pallet in the corner over there is doing. What is that over there?
Exactly. and ask those questions, especially if you're working for an enterprise shipper and you've got a lot of loads moving. You learn those mechanisms, and that's where you fail. If you don't understand the logistics mechanisms and how they're intertwined with each other in an orderly fashion, you're gonna miss the boat. You will. And a lot of brokers out there never even step foot in a warehouse, never even in a DC. And those things are so critical. So you ask those questions, and that when you talk to a shipper, you know what you're talking about, and it's pertinent information that you're sharing back and forth.
Jeff,
we have plenty of theft cases that go on where we don't have the level of information that we actually had in this particular circumstance. We had cameras on the truck. We knew exactly who the real driver was. We knew that the BOL was not properly prepared by the broker, i.e., it had the broker's name, not the carrier's name in there. And I have to talk about that all the time. Because how many TMSs out there are defaulting by putting the broker's name as the carrier? Guys, if your TMS does that, change it, please, for the love of God, because it's not just a liability on the carrier. It's a liability on you as the broker, because now you're holding yourself out as a carrier and you have legal obligations in that capacity.
And it's even worse when you actually do have an asset division that is called the same thing as your brokerage. And so how can you say, if you say that you forgot to put the carrier name in place of your broker name, then you're misrepresentation.
Right.
If you say, well, it's supposed to go on one of our trucks, then how are you saying you gave it to my client? How are they responsible for this? There's nothing here with my client's name on it. The BOL is signed by the driver that took the load. It's big A and a big A. So Antonio Avila, I assume that that's his signature. It's okay to say him because he's not in business anymore, I guess. But
well, he's not part of the agreement.
Right.
Yeah, it comes down to contracts, a transportation agreement under requirements and expectations. There's a fine little thing in there when you talk to a carrier, asset base or whatever, what is expected, And to your point, Jen, if you're a large asset carrier and you have a broker division, you make it a point to put that in the transportation agreement saying, hey, if we overbooked, your loads are going to go to our brokerage division and you will be notified. If you are not notified, then don't load that carrier, or whatever it might be. But it has to be in writing and clear and concise.
And
A
I
lot
have
of
to
people
note that
miss
this load was not put on any load board. Okay. So the information was gotten from this email. I think it was actually a crime of opportunity. I think they hacked in. When they found the information, they said, oh, this is a juicy one. Let's go ahead and book it up. Okay. And so I don't think they knew that it was in there. I think they just happened upon it and it was a crime of opportunity and they took advantage of it. And that's how that got scored. Now, the broker says, you don't think that the carrier has any liability to this at all? I mean, we have indemnification against theft. And I said, if they had taken possession of it and it got stolen out of their trailer at a truck stop, yes.
Yeah.
I said, you're under normal circumstances when freight gets stolen, the carrier has taken possession. Yes, definitely they would have some liability to that. I said, but in this case, because they were 100% blind to everything going on and nobody called them to let them know or anything till after the fact, no, I don't think they have any liability here.
Hmm.
I said I just don't in this case feel like they really do. They didn't have a dog in this fight. And if your shipper doesn't care about their freight and you don't care about your shipper's freight, then why in the hell is a carrier going to care about your freight? I mean, I'm not trying to be ugly about it, but
Oh,
you get what you pay for too. I mean, I don't know who this guy is or where he came from or how much he was promised for this load, but he was easily redirected and he didn't get paid for it either. And I called him up. He's like, no, I didn't get paid for it, but he wasn't having a fit about it because I 100% believe that that guy was a part of the fraudulent thing. Now, I had somebody say to me, "Hey, do you maybe it was an inside job from that broker that helped? They're working with them to this." And now, the COO of the brokerage said to me on Christmas Eve, "Well, we think that somebody within your carrier client." So I was said that the carrier client, had the was working with him. I was like, no. He's like, well, I said, it's funny that you say that because somebody actually had said somebody from your side might be working with him. He's like, oh, I can assure you, absolutely not. Wait a minute. You're what size brokerage? And you sit beside how many people in a day? How do you know that one of your people wasn't working with, I mean, any more than I can confirm that my carrier wasn't?
right.
It just takes a little push to get somebody to go bad. I mean, you look at the drug cartels. Drug cartels can get to somebody and sit there and say, "Hey, the next time you've got a load of iPhones going out of this site, because they know they store the iPhones there, just shoot us a quick text. Here's $50,000 for your trouble."
Yep.
And if you don't do it, we know where you live. I mean, it's not hard to get to somebody. So it can become an inside job very quickly. And it could be at the shipper. It could be at the broker. Yes, it could be at the carrier. The likelihood in this particular case, there was no inside job. And
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with you.
On
The
either side.
carrier should have no liability whatsoever. It's a shame that they have to accept a settlement that forces them to accept liability and lose thousands upon thousands of dollars just to be able to continue to do business. That is a crying shame.
Yeah.
Well, Narc, you mentioned I brought up broker transparency already. Of course, we already know the debate that's going to spark. We're coming up towards the top of the hour. We've been at it for this is the third show I've done today, so I've been on camera all damn morning.
Yeah, we were late starting though, so
we were. But it is time for us to start to wrap this up. Jenny, what final thoughts do you have about this case?
all I can say is that lately I've had a lot of claim cases like this. Not necessarily stolen freight, but somebody took loads from a text message, not a WhatsApp, not a Telegram, a text message, and they were redirected to a warehouse in Yuma, Arizona. Which, if anybody knows, that's right across the border. I mean, it's right on the border. Like you could just.
Yeah.
You could spit from there to Mexico. And so the FBI had to get involved with that one. We think that it could have had cartel ties because it was redirecting many, many loads for over a month into one particular warehouse. And it was all produce loads. So who wants carrots, but it's what's in the carrots that count, right? The vitamin A and the vitamin, but and the AR-15s, and so anyways, but so it has. I don't know what was in it really. Honestly, it was carrots that was hauled that was redirected there. But the FBI was been notified and they're working on that one. People, stop doing shady stuff. Stop trying. I understand. I asked why they took these loads because they were not ELP compliant and they didn't want other brokers to report them for not being ELP compliant. That doesn't mean they're not non-domiciled. It just means they're not ELP compliant. And so they were trying to keep trucks running. And I said, well, what you've effectively done here is made sure you're not going to get paid at all because number one, you didn't follow the BOL. You took it to some place that's not on the BOL. So you can't recourse back to shippers and consignees because you didn't do the job. And the broker that gave him the load has had their authority gone since November the 3rd. So there's no bond payment. But even if there was, this is exempt commodity, so you wouldn't get paid for it anyway. But stop doing stuff and thinking that I'm gonna come by and sweep in and wave my magic wand and fix everything for you. Stop flying by the seat of your pants, follow the rules, double check, and take care of yourselves out there because that's the cheapest way is the most expensive way of doing things. I think somebody once said.
That's what I had. Is the cheapest way of doing business is the most expensive decision you'll ever make.
Absolutely.
So, I've just had several different ones. I have a household goods ones that I've had to reach out to, my state congressman on now. It's just crazy what's going on out here. They didn't provide any tariff with their name on it. They didn't provide the pamphlets and booklets required by the FMCSA that you have to leave with your shippers. They didn't have an SIT authorization to take their belongings out of the state. It was supposed to be an intrastate load, and that carrier removed the shipper's belongings to another state completely to store them with no SIT authorization, and that's not legal. And now they want $7,000 more to come deliver the stuff back to her.
I'm waiting for that to finally abate. When that situation resolves, Jenny, I want to have you back and we want to break that one down because household goods is a whole nother monster. Most of us deal with just traditional freight. We don't play in the household goods world, but that is its own beast. And it does need to be addressed. There's a ton of domestic homegrown fraud that permeates that entire animal too. And you have really been hitting all over that. In that particular case, I've been helping Jenny, if nothing else, being a sounding board when she hits that stress level.
Well, it's
at
hard
the end
because
of the day.
you just don't want to put everything out there because number one, you don't want to tell all of the secrets out there because that tells the bad guys how to do it. First of all. Number two, you also don't want to. Not everybody wants all of their stuff out there because they don't want them to know, what's going on. And I'm not trying to keep it under the rug, so hush hush, so to speak. In some cases, sometimes they're just wanting them to voice or just get it taken care of and get a resolution so they can move on and get it behind them, and they don't want there to be any negative pushback.
How many times have we heard in this industry? We've heard CargoNet and some of these others sit there and say, oh, yeah, well, these are the fraud numbers or the theft numbers for the month or for the quarter. But, it's really only a drop in the bucket because how many people are not reporting it?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want the embarrassment. They don't want the insurance issues. They don't want any of the headaches and the publicity that comes from it. So much of this continues to go on. It goes on unreported, and everyone's turning a blind eye. And that's one of the things that the task force is trying to stop. We need to address it. We need to address it head on, and we need to address it with strong processes and procedures in order to get people moving in the right direction, properly, ethically, etc., so that the industry can function the way it's supposed to function. Right now,
if you think that something is wrong, to go with your gut. There's a reason why you've got that little niggling in the back of your mind here, and hair standing up on your neck, because there's something wrong. You need to double check it, at least for peace of mind, if nothing else.
Yes.
Help is out there, ladies and gentlemen. If you think you have an issue, whether you're a broker, carrier, factor, insurance agent, etc., if you think something is not quite right, go to our website, freightfraudtaskforce.com. Reach out to us. Go to the contact us page. Let us know what you're dealing with, and we'll be happy to put our experts to work for you and give you some strong advice that might be able to help you resolve your issue. The sooner you contact us is the sooner we can help you. If you have a load get stolen, you have only hours before that load permanently disappears.
And I just want to say, make sure you bring all of the information. Even if you think it might look bad on you, we can't help you to the best of our abilities if you're not completely honest with us, because we need to know what we're looking at, and you could be putting in a roadblock for us to get held up at that we could have gotten the freight back. So
Or it can turn right back around and blow you up because you did something catastrophically wrong.
Yep.
Look, we're happy to tell you what's happened. We're happy to keep it private, but we want to make sure you're doing the right thing and that you are protected as much as you can. You come to us asking for help, we're going to try to help you.
Yeah.
Until you prove that you're actually the biggest part of the problem, in which case we'll educate you and then we'll send you on your way. But that's how that goes. Jeff, you got any thoughts here?
Yeah. My final comment is spot market is the petri dish of fraud. You have to take additional steps to protect your brand image and reputation at all costs. Just because you've got a great rate from a carrier doesn't mean squat. Due diligence overdoes profits and margins, because all you need is one major loss and everything that you thought that you saved and made a lot of money on, gone so quickly. And don't say it'll never happen to me. It always takes a catastrophic event to change somebody's mind, and keep that up there when you're perusing through the spot market. I don't. I'm a dedicated service provider for that simple reason. I don't want the headaches. I haven't faced fraud in 45 years. People think it's BS. It's true. I never, ever did, because I had processes in place, and it worked. And I know that it works now. You just got to be on top of your game constantly all the time, and listen, a lot of great vetting companies out there. I love them. I appreciate what they're doing. But be careful what you put out there, because you're creating loopholes, like Jen said, and you're creating roadmaps for the bad guys to circumvent and to figure it out.
And now they've already targeted your company as an easy company, as an easy hit, because they got away with it. So now look for them to be coming back. Yeah.
Don't tell them how to not do something. Tell people how you stopped it. That, you know what I mean? Like prevented it from happening. Prevention is worth its weight in gold. Mm-hmm. So be very, very careful about what you put out there, because those bad guys are on the net. They're watching, they're listening, and they're taking notes. So be very careful.
This broker also said they would not probably change any processes due to this. And then by the time they got off the phone with me on Christmas Eve, they said, well, maybe it would warrant a phone call, I guess. Okay. if that's the best I can get out of this.
Yeah.
That you reap what you sow, I'm sorry to say.
Right.
Well, folks, next week on the TikTok Diner, we have Drew Wilder from Vicarious Liability coming out. He's going to be talking to us about some of the pitfalls that exist. Also going to be talking about a case he and I worked together late last year, where it's one of those situations. Guy asked us for help, and then turns out he's part of the problem. He's one of the scammers. So we will tell that story and try to educate some people on COI issues that exist. In the meantime, your check is sitting on the table. Please be sure to tip your waitress, and we will see you next time on TikTok Diner. Take care, y'all.